The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of my office, shattering my concentration. I glanced at the caller ID. Mom. My stomach twisted. She never called during work hours unless something was wrong. "Hello?" I answered, my voice tight with apprehension. "Tina, it's your father." Mom's voice cracked. "He's gone." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of my desk, struggling to breathe. "What? When? How?" "This morning, a heart attack." She paused, her breath hitching. "You need to come home, now." I nodded, forgetting she couldn't see me. "I'll be there as soon as I can." Hanging up, I stared blankly at my computer screen. The quarterly report I'd been working on suddenly seemed trivial. My father was dead. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at my college graduation, was gone. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, nearly colliding with my assistant. "Martina? Is everything okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "Family emergency," I managed. "Cancel my meetings for the week. I have to go home." The drive to my childhood home was a blur. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Roger's car already parked there. Of course, he'd beaten me here. He probably lived closer, I reasoned, trying to quell the familiar resentment. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Before I could reach the front door, it swung open. Roger stood there, his face a mask of grief. "About time you showed up," he said, his tone accusatory. I bit back a retort. This wasn't the time for our usual bickering. "I came as soon as I heard," I said, pushing past him into the house. Mom sat on the couch, her eyes red-rimmed and vacant. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Relief? Need? But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Oh, Tina," she said, her voice flat. "You're here." I moved to sit beside her, but Roger intercepted, taking the spot next to Mom and putting an arm around her shoulders. I perched awkwardly on the edge of an armchair. "What happened?" I asked, looking between them. Roger cleared his throat. "Dad collapsed this morning. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late." I nodded, fighting back tears. "Have you made any arrangements?" "We were waiting for you," Mom said, her tone implying I'd kept them waiting. "I'm here now," I said, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. "What can I do to help?" Roger leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Actually, Tina, there's something we need to discuss." I tensed, recognizing the look on his face. It was the same one he'd worn as a teenager when he was about to throw me under the bus for something. "What is it?" I asked warily. He exchanged a glance with Mom before continuing. "We think it would be best if you moved back home for a while." I blinked, sure I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" "Your mother needs support right now," Roger said, his voice smooth and reasonable. "And let's face it, your job allows you to work from anywhere. It makes sense for you to come home and help out." I looked at Mom, expecting her to protest, to say she didn't need a babysitter. Instead, she nodded, her eyes pleading. "Please, Tina," she said softly. "I can't bear to be alone in this house." I felt the walls closing in, old patterns reasserting themselves. Part of me wanted to run, to go back to the life I'd built far away from their influence. But a larger part, the part that had always longed for their approval, for a real connection, made me nod. "Okay," I heard myself say. "I'll do it." As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late to take them back. I was trapped once again in the web of family obligation and manipulation. Little did I know, this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. As I unpacked my suitcase in my childhood bedroom, memories flooded back, each one a painful reminder of why I'd left in the first place. The faded posters on the walls, the well-worn carpet, everything was exactly as I'd left it. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, one I desperately tried to seal away. A knock on the door startled me. "Tina?" It was Mom. "Can I come in?" "Sure," I replied, bracing myself. She entered, her eyes darting around the room before settling on me. "I'm glad you're here," she said, but her tone lacked warmth. "There's so much to do. The funeral home needs decisions, and I just can't." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'll take care of it, Mom. Don't worry." She gave me a tight smile. "Thank you. Oh, and Roger's coming over for dinner. He wants to discuss the will." My stomach clenched. Of course, Roger was already thinking about the will. "Mom, Dad just died. Can't this wait?" Her face hardened. "Your brother is just being practical, Tina. Don't start causing problems already." I bit my tongue. the familiar feeling of being the family scapegoat washing over me. Fine, I'll be down soon. As she left, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The successful, confident woman I'd become in the city seemed to have vanished, replaced by the insecure girl I'd once been. I straightened my shoulders, determined not to let them see my weakness. Downstairs, I found Roger already seated at the dining table, his wife Ava beside him. They both looked up as I entered, Roger's eyes narrowing. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," he sneered. I ignored him, focusing on setting the table. Mom bustled in with a casserole, her favorite peace offering when tensions ran high. As we ate, the silence was oppressive. Finally, Roger cleared his throat. "So about Dad's will." I set down my fork. "Really, Roger, right now?" He leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "Yes, right now. We need to be practical. Dad left everything to Mom, but she's in no state to manage it all. I think we should consider setting up a trust." "A trust?" I echoed, suspicion rising. "And who would manage this trust?" "Well, I am the eldest," Roger said smoothly. "It makes sense for me to take charge." I turned to Mom, expecting her to protest. Instead, she nodded. "Roger has always been good with money, Tina, and with your father gone, I just don't know how I'll manage." The betrayal stung, even though I should have expected it. "Mom, you don't need Roger to manage your money. I'm a financial advisor, remember? I can help you." Roger scoffed. "Please, playing with numbers in the city is hardly the same as managing real assets." "Real assets?" I shot back. "You mean like the business you ran into the ground last year?" His face flushed with anger. "That was different. I was sabotaged." "Enough!" Mom slammed her hand on the table. "This is exactly why we need Roger in charge. Tina, you've always been so emotional. Your brother can handle this objectively." I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Objectively? There's nothing objective about this. He's trying to take control of everything, and you're letting him." "Sit down, Tina," Roger growled. "You're upsetting Mom." I looked at Mom, saw the tears in her eyes, and felt a flicker of guilt. But then I caught the triumphant smirk on Roger's face, and my resolve hardened. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I won't sit down and let you manipulate this situation. Dad's barely cold, and you're already plotting how to get your hands on his money. It's disgusting." "How dare you?" Ava interjected, speaking for the first time. "After everything Roger and I have done for this family." I laughed bitterly. "Done for this family? You mean like abandoning Mom and Dad when they needed help last year? Or constantly belittling my achievements?" "That's enough," Mom shouted. "Tina, if you can't be civil, maybe you should leave." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, seeing the same dismissal and disappointment I'd seen throughout my childhood. In that moment, I realized nothing had changed. I was still the outsider, the one who didn't fit. "You're right," I said quietly. "I should leave. I never should have come back in the first place." As I turned to go, Roger's voice stopped me. "Running away again, little sister? Some things never change." I paused at the doorway, my hand on the frame. Without turning back, I said, "You're right, Roger. Some things never change, but some things do, and I'm not the same person you used to bully." With that, I walked out, leaving behind the echoes of my past and the family that had never truly been mine. I stared at my laptop screen, my finger hovering over the send button. The email to my boss, explaining my decision to quit and work remotely, felt like a point of no return. With a deep breath, I clicked, sealing my fate. The ping of an incoming text made me jump. It was from Mom. "Where are you? The funeral's tomorrow. We need you here." Guilt gnawed at me. Despite everything, I couldn't abandon them on the day we laid Dad to rest. I texted back a terse, "I'll be there," and started packing. The next morning, I arrived at the church early, hoping to avoid a confrontation. No such luck. Roger cornered me in the vestibule, his face a mask of false concern. "Nice of you to show up," he sneered. "Mom's been worried sick." I bit back a retort, reminding myself this was Dad's day. "I'm here now. Where do you need me?" He thrust a stack of programs into my hands. "Make yourself useful, and try not to upset Mom again." As I distributed the programs, I caught sight of Mom. She looked small and fragile, leaning on Ava's arm. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something. Regret? Longing? But then Roger stepped between us, and the moment was gone. The service was a blur of hymns and eulogies. I sat in the front pew, feeling like an outsider in my own family. When it came time for the family to speak, Roger took the podium, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke about Dad's strength and wisdom. The congregation nodded and murmured in agreement. Then it was my turn. As I stood, my legs shaky, I caught Roger's smug look. He thought I'd fail, break down, prove once again that I was the weak link. Instead, I surprised everyone, including myself, by sharing a side of Dad few had seen. I spoke of his quiet moments, his love of crossword puzzles, the way he'd slip me extra allowance when Mom wasn't looking. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. As I returned to my seat, Mom squeezed my hand. For a moment, I dared to hope things might be different. That hope was short-lived. At the wake, I overheard Roger and Ava in heated discussion with Mom. "She can't stay here," Ava hissed. "You know how she is, always stirring up trouble." "But she's my daughter," Mom protested weakly. Roger's voice was firm. "And I'm your son. Trust me, Mom, it's better this way." I stepped into view, my presence silencing them. "Don't worry," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. "I'm not staying. I quit my job to come take care of you, Mom, but clearly I'm not wanted." Mom's face crumpled. "Tina, that's not true. We need you." "No," I corrected her gently. "You need someone to blame, someone to make you feel better about yourselves. I won't be that person anymore." Roger's face darkened. "Always the drama queen, aren't you? Can't you see you're upsetting Mom on today of all days?" I turned to him, years of pent-up anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "No, Roger. You're upsetting her by manipulating her, just like you always have. But I'm done playing your games." I looked at Mom, seeing the conflict in her eyes. "I love you, Mom, and I love Dad, but I can't keep sacrificing myself for a family that doesn't want me. I'll be back to pack my things tomorrow." As I turned to leave, Mom called out, "Tina, please, don't go." I paused at the door, my heart breaking all over again. "I'm sorry, Mom, but for once, I have to choose myself." Walking out into the fading sunlight, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Little did I know, my decision to leave would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Not just for me, but for the family I was leaving behind. I'd barely settled into a routine of working from home and caring for Mom when the hurricane hit. Not a literal storm, but the tempest of Roger and Ava's unexpected return. They burst through the front door one afternoon, luggage in tow, as if they owned the place, which I realized with a sinking feeling they probably soon would. "Surprise!" Ava trilled, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "We thought we'd come stay for a while, help out with Mom." I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind racing. I didn't know you were coming," Roger smirked. "Well, we couldn't let you shoulder all the burden alone, could we, little sister?" Before I could respond, Mom appeared, her face lighting up at the sight of Roger. "Oh, my boy, what a wonderful surprise!" I watched as she embraced him, then Ava, with more warmth than she'd shown me in weeks. The familiar ache of exclusion settled in my chest. That night, over dinner, Roger dropped his bombshell. "Mom, Ava and I have been talking. We think it's time to discuss the estate." I nearly choked on my water. "The estate? Dad's only been gone a month." Roger's eyes narrowed. "Exactly, and in that month, what have you done to secure Mom's future? We need to be practical." "Practical?" I echoed, disbelief coloring my voice. "Is that what you call moving in and immediately bringing up money?" "Tina," Mom chided, "your brother is just looking out for us." I turned to her, hurt and anger warring inside me. "And what about me? I quit my job to come take care of you. Doesn't that count for anything?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Then Ava spoke up, her voice syrupy sweet. "Of course it does, dear. But let's face it, Roger has more experience with these things. He knows what's best." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air." Outside, I paced the backyard, trying to calm my racing thoughts. I knew what Roger was doing. He was making his play for control, just like he always had. And once again, Mom was falling for it. When I returned inside, I found them huddled in the living room, paper spread across the coffee table. They looked up as I entered, guilt flashing across Mom's face. "What's going on?" I demanded. Roger stood, his posture defensive. "We're reviewing Dad's will and assets. Mom's agreed to let me handle things." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Mom, is this true?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's for the best, Tina. Roger knows what he's doing." And I don't? I shot back. I'm a financial advisor, for God's sake. Playing with numbers in the city isn't the same as managing real estate and investments, Roger sneered. I turned to Mom, pleading, You can't let him do this, he'll take everything. That's enough, Mom snapped. I've made my decision. Roger will handle the estate. The betrayal stung, sharp and familiar. I looked at each of them, Roger's smug satisfaction, Ava's false sympathy, Mom's averted gaze, and something inside me snapped. Fine, I said, my voice cold. If that's what you want, I won't stand in your way. But don't expect me to stick around and watch you destroy everything Dad worked for. I stormed upstairs, throwing my belongings into a suitcase. As I zipped it closed, there was a soft knock at the door. Mom stood there looking small and uncertain. Tina, please, she began. Don't leave like this. I hefted my bag onto my shoulder. Why not? It's clear I'm not needed or wanted here. That's not true, she protested weakly. I laughed, a bitter sound. Isn't it? You've always chosen Roger over me. Why should now be any different? As I brushed past her, she grabbed my arm. Where will you go? I paused at the top of the stairs, a lifetime of hurt and disappointment weighing on me. Anywhere but here. With that, I descended the stairs, ignoring Roger and Ava's startled looks as I headed for the front door. As I reached for the handle, I heard Mom's plaintive voice one last time. Tina, please. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made my choice. The door clicked shut behind me, the sound of it echoing with finality. I was leaving, yes, but this time I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something new, something that was entirely my own. The harsh fluorescent lights of the motel room cast long shadows as I paced back and forth, my mind a whirlwind of anger and hurt. It had been 3 days since I'd walked out of my childhood home, 3 days of ignoring calls and texts from Mom. But I couldn't ignore the latest message from Roger. We need to talk about the will. Come home now. I gritted my teeth, my finger hovering over the delete button. But curiosity got the better of me. What game was he playing now? Against my better judgment, I drove back to the house. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. The air was thick with tension, and Mom's eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Roger sat at the dining room table, a stack of papers in front of him. His smug smile made my skin crawl. Ah, the prodigal daughter returns, he sneered. I ignored him, turning to Mom. What's going on? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Tina, please sit down. There's something we need to discuss. As I sat, Roger pushed a document towards me. Read it, he commanded. My eyes scanned the page, widening in disbelief. It was Dad's will, but not the one I remembered. This version left everything to Roger, with only a small stipend for Mom and nothing for me. This can't be right, I stammered. Dad wouldn't do this. Roger's smile widened. Oh, but he did. Signed and notarized just a month before he died. I turned to Mom, desperate for support. You can't believe this. It has to be a fake. She wrung her hands, avoiding my gaze. I don't know, Tina. Your father and I had been having problems. He was angry about some financial decisions I'd made. The pieces started falling into place. What financial decisions? Ava spoke up from the corner, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Oh, honey, didn't you know? Your mother's been gambling. She's in debt up to her eyeballs. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Is this true? Mom's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Roger leaned back, triumphant. So you see, little sister, it's for the best that I handle things from now on. We wouldn't want Mom to lose everything, would we? I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. I'm calling a lawyer. Go ahead, Roger taunted. But I wouldn't if I were you, unless you want the IRS looking into your finances too. I froze. What are you talking about? He pulled out another document. Remember those loans you gave Mom over the years? The ones she used for her little habit? Well, it turns out they weren't exactly reported properly. One phone call from me and you could be facing some serious charges. The blood drained from my face. I'd always known helping Mom was risky, but I never imagined it could come back to haunt me like this. You wouldn't, I whispered. His eyes glittered with malice. Try me. I looked at Mom, silently pleading for her to stand up to him, to tell the truth, but she just sat there, defeated and small. In that moment, I saw my future laid out before me. If I stayed, I'd be trapped in this toxic web forever, always at Roger's mercy. But if I left... Fine, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You win, Roger. The house, the money, it's all yours. But know this, you're not just getting the assets. You're getting all of it. The debt, the responsibility, everything. I turned to Mom, years of pain and disappointment welling up. And you. I've spent my whole life trying to earn your love, to be good enough. I'm done. From this moment on, you're on your own. With shaking hands, I pulled out my keys and placed them on the table. I'm leaving, and this time, I'm not coming back. Ever. As I walked out the door, I heard Mom's anguished cry and Roger's angry shout. But I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. Consequences be damned. In my car, I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. It would be on my terms, not theirs. 6 months had passed since I'd walked away from my family, and I'd thrown myself into rebuilding my life. My home office was a testament to my success. A sleek desk, top-of-the-line computer, and a wall of certifications. I'd become one of the most sought-after financial advisors in the city, working remotely and living on my own terms. But on this particular morning, as I sipped my coffee and scrolled through my emails, my carefully constructed world began to crumble. The first blow came in the form of a news article. Local business mogul faces fraud charges. My heart raced as I read about Roger's company being investigated for embezzlement and tax evasion. Despite everything, a part of me still cared what happened to my family. Before I could process this, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Tina? It was Mom, her voice small and trembling. I need your help. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom, I told you. Please, she interrupted. It's bad, Tina. Really bad. Roger's in trouble, and I think I might be too. My mind raced. What do you mean? She broke down, sobbing. The gambling. I used some of the company money. Roger found out and tried to cover it up. Now the police are involved, and I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. All the pain and resentment I'd been carrying suddenly seemed insignificant in the face of this crisis. Where are you? I asked, already reaching for my keys. An hour later, I walked into the police station, my heart pounding. Mom sat in the waiting area, looking small and defeated. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Oh, Tina, she whispered. I'm so sorry for everything. I sat beside her, torn between the urge to comfort her and the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. Let's focus on getting through this, I said, my voice steady. Where's Roger? As if on cue, a door opened, and Roger was led out in handcuffs. Our eyes met, and for the first time in my life, I saw genuine fear in my brother's face. Tina, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't think you'd come. Before I could respond, a detective approached us. Miss Glenda Harris? He addressed Mom. We have some questions for you as well. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for mine. Tina, please, don't leave me. In that moment, standing in the harsh fluorescent light of the police station, I felt the weight of my family's fate resting squarely on my shoulders. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built for myself, could come crashing down if I got involved. But as I looked at Mom's pleading eyes and Roger's defeated posture, I realized that despite everything, they were still my family. Flawed, dysfunctional, but mine. Taking a deep breath, I turned to the detective. I'm Martina Harris, their daughter and sister. I'm also a certified financial advisor. Before you question my mother, I think there are some things you should know. The detective raised an eyebrow. And what might those be, Miss Harris? I squared my shoulders, feeling the full weight of my decision. The truth about our family's finances and my role in them. As I began to speak, laying out years of financial maneuvers, loans, and cover-ups, I saw the shock on Mom's face and the dawning realization in Roger's eyes. I was exposing everything, not just their mistakes, but my own complicity in trying to keep our dysfunctional family afloat. With each word, I felt my carefully constructed new life slipping away. My professional reputation, my hard-won independence, all of it was on the line. But as I continued to talk, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in years, I was being completely honest about my family and my part in its troubles. As I finished my explanation, the detective's face was unreadable. Miss Harris, he said slowly, you do realize that by telling me all this, you've implicated yourself in several financial crimes? I nodded, my throat dry. I do. He sighed heavily. I'm afraid I'm going to need you to come with me for further questioning. As I stood to follow him, I caught sight of my reflection in a nearby window. The woman staring back at me looked tired and scared, but also strangely at peace. I had finally made my choice, not running away, not enabling, but facing the truth head-on, whatever the consequences might be. Little did I know this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything, pushing me to my absolute limit and forcing me to confront the true meaning of family, loyalty, and redemption. The harsh, fluorescent lights of the interrogation room buzzed incessantly as I sat, my hands clasped tightly on the cold metal table. Hours had passed since I'd started my confession, laying bare the tangled web of financial deceit that had ensnared my family for years. Detective Simmons leaned back in his chair, his face a mask of professional detachment. "Miss Harris, I appreciate your honesty, but you understand the gravity of what you've disclosed, don't you?" I nodded, my throat dry. "I do." He sighed, shuffling the papers in front of him. "Your mother's gambling debts, your brother's embezzlement, your own involvement in covering it all up. It's a mess, to put it mildly." Before he could continue, there was a knock at the door. Another officer poked his head in. "Detective, there's someone here insisting on speaking with Miss Harris. Says he's her lawyer." My heart leapt. I hadn't called anyone. Who could it be? Moments later, a familiar face walked in, and my jaw dropped. It was Mark, my personal trainer, looking completely out of place in a hastily donned suit. "Mark, what are you doing here?" He gave me a reassuring smile. "I'm here to help, Tina. When you didn't show up for our session, I got worried. I did some digging and, well, here I am." Detective Simmons raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Mark Johnson, attorney at law," he said smoothly, though I could see the nervousness in his eyes. "I'd like a moment alone with my client, please." Once we were alone, Mark's composure cracked. "Tina, what the hell is going on? I'm not really a lawyer, but I couldn't just leave you here." I felt a rush of gratitude, quickly followed by panic. "Mark, you can't lie to the police. This is serious. I've done some things, bad things." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. But first, you need a real lawyer." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, but the content made my blood run cold. "I know everything. Meet me at Dad's grave in an hour, or I go public. Roger." Of course, he'd find a way to make this worse. I looked at Mark, torn between the urge to confess everything and the need to protect him from this mess. "Mark, I need to go. There's something I have to do." His eyes searched mine. "Tina, please, let me help you." I shook my head, feeling the weight of years of family secrets pressing down on me. "I can't involve you in this. It's my family, my problem." An hour later, I stood in the cemetery, the cool mist clinging to my skin. Roger emerged from the shadows, looking haggard but determined. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "What do you want, Roger?" He pulled out a USB drive. "This contains everything. Mom's gambling records, my company's financials, your involvement. One click, and it all goes to the press and the DA." I felt my heart racing. "Why? Haven't you done enough damage?" His face twisted with a mix of anger and desperation. "Because I need you to fix this, Tina. You've always been the smart one, the one who could make the numbers work, make it all go away, or we all go down together." In that moment, standing before our father's grave, I felt the full weight of my family's dysfunction crushing me. Every effort I'd made to break free, to build my own life, had led me right back here. I looked at Roger, seeing not just my tormentor, but a scared, broken man, and I realized that this moment wasn't just about him or Mom or even me. It was about breaking the cycle, once and for all. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision. "No, Roger, I won't fix this. Not this time." His eyes widened in disbelief. "What? I'm done covering up, done enabling. We're going to face this, all of it, together, as a family." As the words left my mouth, I felt a strange mix of terror and liberation. I had no idea what would happen next, but for the first time in my life, I was choosing truth over fear, accountability over escape. Little did I know, this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would test the very limits of my strength, my relationships, and my understanding of what family truly means. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment of truth, quite literally. As I gazed out at the sea of faces, I saw Roger and Mom, both looking pale and defeated. And there, in the back, sat Mark, his presence a silent pillar of support. "Miss Harris," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about your family's financial dealings over the past decade." Taking a deep breath, I launched into my testimony. I laid it all bare: Mom's gambling addiction, Roger's embezzlement, my own complicity in covering it up. With each revelation, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, even as I saw the shock and disappointment ripple through the courtroom. When I finished, the judge leaned forward. "Miss Harris, given your cooperation and the extent of your disclosure, the court is inclined to be lenient. However, I must ask, why come forward now after all these years?" I met his gaze steadily, because I finally realized that protecting my family doesn't mean enabling their worst behaviors. It means holding them and myself accountable. As I stepped down from the stand, I caught Roger's eye. For the first time in our lives, I saw something akin to respect in his gaze. The sentencing came swiftly. Mom was ordered to undergo mandatory addiction counseling and community service. Roger faced a hefty fine and probation. And me? I was given a suspended sentence, contingent on my continued cooperation with the Financial Crimes Unit. As we left the courthouse, a swarm of reporters descended upon us. I stepped forward, shielding Mom and Roger from the onslaught of questions. "My family has made mistakes," I said into the sea of microphones, "but we're committed to making amends and rebuilding, not just our lives, but the trust we've broken." Later that evening, I sat in my apartment, emotionally drained, but oddly at peace. A knock at the door revealed Mark, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a tentative smile. "Thought you could use this," he said, stepping inside. As we sat on my couch, glasses in hand, Mark turned to me. "Tina, what you did today, it was incredibly brave." I shook my head. "It was necessary. I just wish I'd had the courage to do it sooner." He took my hand, his touch sending a warmth through me. "It's not too late to start over, to build the kind of life and family you've always wanted." Looking into his eyes, I saw a future I'd never dared to imagine before. A future built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love. "I'd like that," I whispered. The next morning I woke to a text from Mom, "Can we talk?" Followed by one from Roger, "Family dinner tonight?" As I typed my responses, I felt a mix of apprehension and hope. This wouldn't be easy. Years of dysfunction couldn't be erased overnight, but for the first time I felt like we had a chance at real healing. That evening, as I walked into my childhood home, I was struck by how different it felt. Gone was the suffocating tension, replaced by an awkward but genuine attempt at warmth. Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Tina," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Roger, looking uncomfortable but determined, extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." As we sat down to eat, the conversation was stilted at first, but slowly we began to talk. Really talk about our past, our mistakes, and our hopes for the future. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, old habits threatening to resurface. But there was also laughter, and a tentative sense of connection that felt more real than anything we'd shared before. As I drove home that night, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I'd spent so long running from my family, trying to escape the pain and disappointment. But in facing our demons head-on, in choosing truth over comfort, I'd found something I never expected. A chance at real family, flaws and all. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, arguments, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in my life, I was excited about the future. Not just my own, but our future as a family. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Mark waiting on my porch, a warm smile on his face. And I knew, with a certainty that filled me with joy, that I was finally home.